Your book.
Oh, wrong button.
Wrong one. That's the end.
Just think of it as the rough draft of the podcast world. This is the Newbie Writers Podcast with your hosts, Damien Both and Catherine Bramkamp.
Hey, this is episode 165 of the Newbie Writers Podcast, and we're kind of doing an outside gig today, outside show, and I'm in my office because our guest, C.S Lakin, or C.S Lakin, either one, she's in a library. What a great place to do a show, from the library. And you've already got in trouble, which I find is funny, being too loud.
Even better.
To have that initial conversation of going, well, I hope it's okay, it's a bit noisy here, and then you get told to be quiet. So, I don't know. Anyway, welcome to the show. So we might.
Yes, welcome.
Thanks.
I wanted to have Suzanne on again because.
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm just saying hi. I didn't know if you were welcoming me or welcoming.
Well,
I am welcoming you, and you can say hi as well.
Okay.
No, Suzanne has a new book out on writing, the 12 Key Pillars of Novel Construction, and it was very helpful to me. So I pulled out, and I'll put them in the show notes. I put in some of the questions that you asked, Suzanne, that really helped me move along, and I'm still moving along on my current book. And we also wanted to talk about publishing in general. You had some interesting ideas that we just were discussing before the show. So let's just, we can just jump in. Tell us a little bit about the 12 key pillars of novel construction and why you even call it novel construction.
Well, I've written a number of writing craft books, and I do blogging all the time on my blog about writing. And because I do about 200 critiques a year, I see a lot of recurring problems and issues and the ways that writers are struggling, especially new writers of novels. So that's what's motivated me to put these books out. This book, I feel, is the most fundamental and comprehensive of all the books I've written, and probably of any book that I've read. So I wanted to create a very fundamental, comprehensive writing craft book that any novelist at any level could use. And my main concern has always been in trying to close that gap or cross that chasm. To me, there's this huge chasm between a writer having a really cool idea for a story or a novel, some cool characters, some basic scene ideas, or maybe an idea for a climax. But how do you take all that stuff and then turn it into a finished product? I feel like there's this huge question mark, and most writers really have no idea how to do this step-by-step process of taking these ideas and molding them, forming them, and giving them order and structure so that they actually can function as a really tight novel. And I'm all about novel structure. Anyone that knows me knows that I'm not a pantser, and I don't approve of pantsing, and all you pantsers out there, they do, but I have a lot of converted pantsers that have gone, have given up the bottle and have become faithful plotters. So you can get me started on that if you want, but I'll tell you just in one sentence, the reason I feel that way is because I've seen way too many novels that have been written by people who are just winging it, and they're terrible. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, but that's going to be my shtick. I'm winging it. It's going to be terrible. That's what the whole point of this show is. Isn't it? Oh.
That's okay. It's fun to wing it. It's fun to be spontaneous, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to write a really super tight novel, at some point you're going to have to deal with structure. I mean, even James Bell, I just read his interview about his new structure book, and he's all really supportive and warm and fuzzy about pantsers, and I love that about him. He's a mentor and a very good friend. But he does come around to that view that at some point the pantser is going to have to be a plotter, because you just can't pants forever. Okay, so maybe there should be a T-shirt that says that.
I wear the pants in my book. Yeah.
can't cancel.
Well, what do you see? Because I like to start my books during in November for NaNoWriMo and just blurt it all out. And then once I see what I've done, then I go back and it's like, okay, especially since I write things that depend on, a series of books depends on each other. I have to look back and say, well, all right, I have to make sure that this happens and this happens. So I end up outlining around that first mess, so to speak.
Right.
What do you find, because you've got a lot of experience with this, what do you find are some of the main problems that spontaneous writing, just the seat of the pantsing kind of writing, what are some of the things that you see that are common and can be prevented if people paid more attention and did more outlining?
Oh, that's a good question, and I think your method is really good because. Sorry, somebody's making a lot of noise right here as I walk by.
Hey, it's a library. Tell them to be quiet.
Library. I'm in the lobby. I'm sitting on the floor, and the doors are going in and out and in and out. Okay, so what you were saying about your method is awesome, and it's great. And I don't want to give the impression that I feel that from the get-go, you should be totally organized and know everything and lay it all out and plot the whole thing, because really everything starts with brainstorming. And my book, and especially my workbook, shows mind maps and how to do that brainstorming. Like you will start with some ideas and start outlining around it. Maybe you're going to start in the middle and work both ways. Some people start at the end and kind of work backwards. That's all part of the brainstorming process. But at some point, there needs to be organization to that. And when you asked about what are like probably the biggest problem or pitfalls that beginning writers have about plotting, working out a novel, I'd say it's twofold. One is they don't have the experience. Like with you, you've written a number of novels, so chances are once you sift through all your ideas, you're like, okay, cool, I know exactly where to put what and where my turning points are going to be and how to build to my climax and all that kind of stuff. You already have some of that under your belt. So part of it is learning the craft, and that just takes time, and it's not a magic pill that you take and we wish, and the next morning you're brilliant and you know exactly how to do it. But so that's one part of it. But the other part of it is really understanding that novels really have to have a specific structure. I'm not saying every novel has to be structured exactly the same, but story structure is pretty, there's a fairly clear, basic kind of structure that takes place in a novel. Novels generally tend to cover a short period of time. They tend to cover one protagonist going after one specific goal. This is something that Michael Haig teaches about screenwriting. He's a top Hollywood screenwriting consultant and has influenced my writing and my teaching a lot. And if you listen to any of his DVD series on the Hero's Two Journeys or his big seller writing screenplays that sell, very, very good for the novelist to read, because he basically lays out this story structure that every great movie follows. But it really holds true for every great novel too. There are very specific things that have to happen at very specific points in the story. And that whole basic structure is found in pretty much every great novel. So I'm going to say, with the caveat, there's a lot of great literary fiction out there that doesn't follow any of this, and it's brilliant and unusual and unique. Usually what carries a novel like that is the exquisite writing that is just unbelievable, so that people don't even notice that there's no plot or that the characters shallow or whatever. My favorite author is Patricia McKillop. She is a fantasy author. She's won 1 million awards. She's brilliant. Her writing is so gorgeous. I've read some of her books 3 or 4 times, and I still can't figure out what the plot is. I have no idea in some of her books what is really going on at all. They're absolutely crazy, obscure, but they're these beautiful fairy tales that whisk you into a crazy world of imagination and beautiful language, and they leave you with a strange, dreamlike experience, which is what you would want and expect in a fairy tale situation. So it works beautifully for that genre that she's doing. And I wouldn't be so forgiving with other authors or even my clients to write that way, because it's lacking a lot of traditional expected novel structure. But you know, when I read her books, I don't even care what the book is about. I don't even care what the story's about. I just get immersed in her world of language, and I just love it. So there are exceptions to the structure. Right. But for newbie writers, I would say learn that structure. And there's plenty of books out there on novel structure. My new book, The 12 Key Pillars of Novel Construction, really doesn't go into novel structure at all. In fact, I threw in like a really token 1 page, like here's your basic structure. This happens at the 10% mark. This happens at the 25% mark. Whatever, I felt like I should say something. But I really didn't want to write a book that dealt with novel structure. I wanted to deal with constructing an entire novel, which is a completely different sort of a situation. So
very interesting. I think writers like Virginia Woolf and James Joyce are in that similar category where the writing is fabulous, but you can read the entire book. I'll never forget this. I was at a senior seminar and I studied Woolf, and we were taking the final. And there was this question about, you know, in the waves when, and I'm going to just pick a name because I can't remember the name. Let's say Jacob, because that would make sense because of Jacob's room. So anyway, when Jacob dies, you know, what happens, blah, 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 blah. And one of my fellow students looks up in horror from his blue book and says, he died? When did he die? What part was that? When he died? And so we all had to find the obscure, weird reference to when this guy died. So that would be, again, if I was, as a newbie writer, I would try to be really clear about when people died in my book. But if you're Virginia Woolf, you don't have to do that because the writing is gorgeous.
You know, I think I've read some of Faulkner's. I've read some of Faulkner's books a few times, and I don't think I've ever figured out what they're about.
Yeah,
like The Sound and the Fury. Okay, I know what it's about, but it's a beautifully intense, crazy book. But yeah, really out there with the plot and structure. So, but again, you know, furry fiction kind of falls into its own little domain, and it seems to be sort of like the excuse. Oh, well, I was writing literary fiction, so that's, you know, I can do whatever I want. Well, you can do whatever you want whenever you want, but it doesn't mean readers are going to love your book. So I really do emphasize more commercial fiction and use commercial fiction structure. So, you know, if somebody doesn't like it, they don't have to like it.
Right. And I think if you're very good at what you do, if you're deeply enmeshed in what the structure of books are, I mean, it just kind of goes back to in any genre, if you've read enough of that genre, if you've read enough mystery books, if you've read enough romance books, if you've read enough fantasy, you've already internalized some of that structure. And so you have a sense of it. So that something like your book, the pillars, that a writer can go back to that book and say, all right, did I get these? Even though I probably did, but let's check. I mean, that's what I used it for. As I said, oh, cool. Well, let's make sure that I've got, you know, what's the emotional reaction of my main character? How are they evolving? I mean, really great questions to help focus what you may know enough, but it helps bring your work up to the next level, which is what really struck me about it.
Right. I did create a workbook for the 12 key pillars.
Yeah, and I think it's
amazing because it took me a whole month, a really long time. I thought I would be able to write it in a week. It took like all.
Really, it took you. Why did it take so long to create the workbook?
I think we're losing it.
Are we losing her?
I think the library has now said we're turning your internet off.
Oh no!
It's got really lumpy.
No, I'm here. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, you're back.
You might have to shuffle closer to the doors that beeped.
I don't know why I disappeared, but
it's because you're leeching the library's internet. Which there is a bit of a massive lag, but that's fine.
So my question was, why did it end up taking so long?
That was because you're in Australia.
Yeah,
no, it's not. It's not.
He's dead on in Australia. Why did it take so long to create that workbook? That's interesting because I would have thought it would have been really simple too.
Well, part of it was just the layout, because I had to put all the little lines to write on. I had to make sure my whole style and the fonts and the formatting and the whole thing looked really nice and appealing and was workable. You know, I had to practice like just writing in the spaces just to see if it looked was comfortable. You know, so it was sort of more like technical things. But I also did want to come up with lots and lots of extra questions, which I storming questions, and then I have all these scene structure temp your characters, like a 3-page questionnaire, which I thought would be helpful. So I just kind of winged it as I went along, and I created a whole bunch more material. So it should be fun. And it's only in paperback, which, you know, because I wanted people to have to write in it.
Right. Right. Correct.
I'm tempted to give Suzanne a quick call back on Skype, see if it will refresh the connection a little bit, because it's starting to really drop out. So if you can just give me a minute, I'll give you a call back.
So you're not hearing, because I hear Catherine really well.
He's going to call you back. So we're going to dump you out and then recall you.
Nothing like free Wi-Fi.
I know.
You wouldn't even be able to do that here. It would just...
Really?
No. You can barely load a web page.
Oh, how frustrating.
And if my child is playing Minecraft on the phone, I'm going to kill him. All right. Oh.
There you go.
It out.
Let's get it back on.
Okay.
All right, let's try that.
There you go.
Should be on right now.
Yep.
Okay, do you hear me?
Yep.
So let's go back and tell me a couple of things that newbie writers do that they shouldn't do.
Well, I mean, aside from jumping in and writing a novel when they just write, they'll write a great novel, and like what you said before earlier, that they maybe read so many books that they feel like they already intuitively know how to write. And it's really not true. There's so much that's involved with learning how to write a novel. There's scene structure, how to craft the dialogue, how to balance the backstory bits with the narrative and the action, the internal thoughts. I mean, there's into writing a novel to really take some time to study, get books, study the craft, subscribe to blogs that teach writing craft. There's a lot of great ones out there besides mine, Live, Write, Thrive. And there's workshops and writing intensives, all that kind of stuff. If someone really wants to write a novel, I would say do all that stuff first before they start going, blog on it.
There you go. Cool. Thank you. What is that? Tell me, you have a menopause murder series?
Oh no, it's a book that I'm just starting now to plot out, or I'm working with a client. Okay. I asked this client to write it with me. He's never published a book yet, but he's survived menopause. So I thought it would be really fun to have him write all the scenes that are in the husband's point of view, and I write all the scenes in the wife's point of view as she goes around murdering people. But we're really still at the planning stage because I've been doing so many other projects. So it's fun. Yeah.
Very cool. I just noticed that and I thought, what a clever idea. So wanted to ask. I think that's fun. So we were talking earlier about how you put a couple of your books, and I assume it's your Western romances, onto audible.com. We've talked about, and with previous people, about doing Audible. How did you get your books onto Audible? How did you do that?
Oh, well, any actually haven't done my Western romance series yet, although the narrator who did Conundrum, one of my psychological relational dramas, I loved her so much, and I loved her voice, and I think she's going to be perfect for my Western. So we're just holding off for now, but I'm going to try to have her do the Westerns with me and bring in a male voice too to do the male parts, which I think would be really fun, but it's just a little more complicated. But Audible is an Amazon company, and if you have a book published, you can just go onto Audible and put it up there and then look for a narrator, and you can either do a royalty split or you can pay them per finished hour, and I've done both. So I'm curious to see how well they do. Just over time. I'm sure it just takes time, but I know that audiobooks are on the rise, and Audible does a cool monthly subscription thing where people can just pay. And,
So you did you do the split then? So it was free up front?
Yeah, it's free up front. I mean, it can be free the whole time if you want it. Just like BabbleCube, I'm doing all my books translated in all these different languages, and it's their distribution channels. So you can just do it for free if you can find a narrator that wants to split royalties, which is fun. It's fun to find narrators and get to know people and have them work with you. And then it's just the narrator's responsibility to all the files and upload all the files and make sure they're done correctly. You don't really have to do anything. I just listen to them and let them know if they made any mistakes. But that's about it.
Love it. That makes it much easier. And of course, you can do that if you're self-published, if you own your stuff.
Yeah, and you can even be your own narrator too if you want. I mean, it'd be fun. I mean, if you have the right kind of microphone and you have a quiet room, and I mean, I was thinking of having my husband do some of the narrating for me because he has a fun voice. So yeah, you can just do it yourself too. You just have to read all their specifications for the settings that you have to do. You know, Damien probably understands all that. You know, to make sure that your mic, you know, that your levels are high enough and for their quality for the audiobooks.
And that you're not sitting in the doorway of a library.
Yeah, you probably want a little quieter room than that. Yeah. Although I had my friend Sharon Hamilton was at a conference, and she was with her, and she has thrown a lot of money at her project, which is fine. But she had her narrator. His name is J.D. Hart, and he's a professional actor. And so she did a demonstration with this seminar. So she said, okay, because people were asking, why can't I just read my own book? And she said, there's no reason at all. Let's have you read. Here's, you know, read your stuff. So a person read out loud, you know, one of their paragraphs. And then Sharon read it. And then her professional actor read it. And, you know, there was no comparison, apparently. You know, he just blew the doors off of everybody. And, and I think about that. It's like, well, you know, it's just like me with book cover design. Pretty much probably should bring in a professional.
Yeah.
So I think that's the way I would go is hire somebody. And I'm not really good at reading my stuff out loud. I stumble over all my words, and even if it's my own stuff, I just mess up. Yeah, that's how I feel.
Suzanne, just quickly, is there any chance
recently listened to
Sorry, we're getting some terrible lag. Is there any chance you can move closer to the library? I don't know. I'm just wondering if you're right on the edge of their Wi-Fi.
I'm in the library. I don't know. I'm in the library. I'm in their lobby.
Yeah.
Does it help if I sit over here? I'm going to sit in the corner. Okay.
Sit in the corner.
Maybe I'm in some kind of dead zone or something.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It might be just on their limit. No, I like
sitting on the corner. I'm sitting on the dark, cold floor.
And rightly so. I'm
not sure. Let me know if I'm still breaking up. But I recently listened to Neil Gaiman do his own reading of his beautiful book, The Ocean at the End of the Lane, and it was one of the most amazing audiobooks I'd ever listened to. It's gorgeous. I'm going to buy it, and I'm going to buy the book too. Amazing story, but to hear the author read it and to characterize these characters that were so personal to him, it was beautiful.
Oh, okay. So that's something to consider too, that, the author, no one loves our characters more than us. So that would also make a difference.
Right. Yeah. Well, he's good at acting too. I mean, he characterizes his characters beautifully, and not everybody can do that.
No, that would be true. That would be me. I would not be able to do that. So, what else can you tell us about the pillars? You launched it. It's doing pretty well. We were talking about good times to launch books. I thought that was an interesting comment. Let's talk a little bit about what your experience has been with that.
Oh, well, just hearing from other writers and editors about this first part of the year is slow for sales, slow for clients and editing jobs. Seems like it's slow. It just is a slow period before tax season, before the tax thing's over. And I've noticed, when I've released books in the summer or the fall, they always sell bigger, faster, more, especially closer to Christmas than they do in the first months of the year. So, I'm not really sure how much data there is on that, but that's just a curious thought. But I was going to mention about this book, The 12 Pillars, that it was on my blog. All my writing craft books are material for my blog that I rework into book form. And one nice thing about having the material on the blog first is to get feedback on what's helped writers and what particularly interested them. And that helps me know what topics or subtopics are the ones that need a lot of attention, that people want to know more about. So I kind of adjust the material in the book to bring out more points for things that I think people really need. Like in the 12 key pillars, the first pillar is developing a concept with a kicker. And this is something that I feel is the hardest thing for writers to get and to develop. And I noticed that it really was a topic that was very popular and of a lot of interest. In fact, Jane Friedman just, reprinted 1,200 words from my book on that topic. That was what she picked because she thought that was so interesting. Because I kind of developed my own views on concept and what you need to have a concept. And also a lot of writing teachers interchange a lot of these words, and it's really, really confusing. I mean, two of my favorite people in the world who teach writing craft have really weird concepts about what the word concept means. And I think that it's too confusing for writers because they try to separate concept, idea, premise. You have to have a premise, but then you have to have a concept, but your concept isn't a premise. It's not an idea, and on it goes. And, It's enough to make someone pull their hair out. So I tried to simplify it and make it really approachable. And I basically tried to say, okay, ideas are just like a lump of clay. You got to take an idea and you have to form it into something that's a really unique concept. Even though every idea has been done a million times, there are ways to take your concept and make it stellar. And that's really the main first big step that a writer needs to do. And then, of course, there's 4 corner pillars that I kind of came up with. I originally decided to do 12 key pillars because I thought, I'm just going to do 1 pillar a month on my blog. That'll be great. But it didn't turn out that way because what happened was as I started to develop the material, I realized there's really 4 corner pillars that really support your novel, and they're the most important. And I ended up spending like the first half of the year on the 4 corner pillars because the other 8 are not really as important or as weighty. I mean, but you'll have different. For instance, motif is one of the pillars. And some people don't want to have any motifs at all. And your novel isn't going to fall or collapse if you don't have a motif. It will if you don't have a killer concept or a protagonist with a goal or a conflict with high stakes or theme, some basic theme. Your novel won't really hold up. But there's other pillars that aren't quite as essential or need to be as heavy duty. Let's say you have 4 really thick pillars and then you can have a bunch of skinny ones to help support the rest of your book. So my husband's a building contractor and I've been doing building construction and building houses for years and years and years with my husband. And so it was inevitable that at some point I was going to have a construction theme on one of my books. So yeah, it's been a great, fun book. And I really think if writers approach creating a novel in that way, is looking at it like a massive construction project, and they need to make sure every piece is in place so that it holds up the story, then they should do well.
Okay. Very cool. What are the four? So tell us the four pillars while we're here. We might as well give away something.
Okay, so I did mention that. The first one is concept with a kicker. The second one is conflict with high stakes, protagonist with a goal, and theme with a heart. And those four pillars need to be worked holistically together all at the same time. In other words, you don't do one and then move on to the next. That's what's so great about brainstorming when you're getting a novel idea developed, is you can work on one little bit for a while and then you can go over and work on another little bit. A lot of people start with a theme. They have an idea. They want to write a book about the death penalty. Okay. Because they feel passionately about the death penalty. So they start with a theme, and then they might come up with a protagonist that embodies their views or whatever. There's been some really interesting movies like about the death penalty, for instance. So and then, of course, from there, they might say, okay, well, what kind of conflict can I create? What kind of high stakes can I create? And I talk a lot about what stakes are because I think people don't understand what high stakes are. I give the example of the movie Fly Away Home, which is one of my very all-time favorite movies, about this girl starring Anna Paquin, whose mother dies in a car accident, and that's in Australia, I believe. And then she gets carted off to Canada to go live with her dad, whom she doesn't really know. And she rescues some goose eggs and hatches some geese. And the whole movie is about how she raises his geese and she has to relocate them to some new place, which happens to be in the southeastern coastal area of Carolina, somewhere in the United States. And it's all about her with this goal of trying to get these geese relocated, which sounds like a story that nobody would be interested in because who cares about geese?
Unless they lay golden eggs.
And so I use it as an example. Yeah, I use it as an example of high stakes because what high stakes really is what is at risk for the character. What is at risk for the protagonist? What do they care about and what do they stand to lose? I mean, you could have a book about a woman who is baking a cake for the county fair and wants to win the cake contest. And that could be really high stakes. That could be huge high stakes if what this woman is doing is her passion. Maybe she has to win this cake contest because the prize money is going to fund her orphanage and she's going to save 3 children who are going to die if she doesn't get this money. You know what I mean? So you can take any idea, create high stakes and make it a fantastic story. I just saw the movie McFarland USA, which is the kind of movie that I love. I knew I was going to absolutely love this movie. And I commented to my husband, like for the millionth time, because I'm sure he gets tired of me saying this. Wow, this movie was perfectly structured. Did you notice how at this moment this happened? And this, I mean, but it was. And it was a story about a teacher in a really poor town in California that grabs a bunch of Hispanic farm workers, these teens that can run fast, and he gets them all the way to the state cross-country championship, and it's a beautiful story. I love those stories of like the little guy triumphing, over all the odds. But but there's high stakes in a story like that because, these kids have everything to lose by going after this goal. Mm-hmm. So, there's a lot that writers really need to understand that have to be set up foundationally for their novel. And if they do get those 4 pillars really solid, they'll have a solid story every time. I really feel that it doesn't matter what the genre is, it doesn't matter what the style is, so long as those 4 pillars are built really strong. And I think that's encouraging for writers because it takes all the mystery out of it. You don't have to guess, gee, I wonder if my book's going to be any good. I wonder if this is a good idea, if the story's going to be any good. And this way you can tell if it will. It'll either hold up or it won't, So I'm hoping that this book and the workbook will really help writers feel more confident and have more very clear, specific, precise instructions so they can just jump right in with their idea. And in the workbook, I do something really weird, which also took a long time, is I decided I would just take a random idea off the top of my head and I would develop it all along through the workbook, just as if I was using the workbook. And I just really picked an idea. And I actually came out with a good idea that I think would really make a great novel. So, but then when you're working in the workbook, you can see that. You can see the kind of questions I ask when I do it in the brainstorming question section, so that I answer all these questions and just kick around ideas. And then I do all the mind maps for them, and I have the mind maps in there so you can see kind of how I'm brainstorming this idea. And this is how I do my novels. So it's fun.
Well, very cool. So you actually take your own advice, which isn't often the case.
I would hope that people who are writing instructors actually do follow what they teach. I mean, I can't imagine teaching something that I wouldn't do.
Every once in a while, I take my own advice, or I think about what I'm doing. It's like, oh, what would I say to me? So what can you... Well, I mentioned... We're going to talk about where to get your book and stuff like that, but what would be some of your final comments to a newbie writer? Obviously get your book. I think it's so comprehensive. It's I was quite impressed with the volume and the information you had in it. What would be a couple of things that people could walk away with right now that you tell them?
Well, just like I said earlier, I would really encourage newbie writers to get books on the writing craft, really study the craft. Just like if you were going to become a doctor, you want to read these books, you want to train, you want to go to workshops, maybe even go to some writing intensives. I still have spaces for my writing intensive this summer in August at Lake Tahoe in the beautiful mansion. If anybody wants to come, it's going to be a 4-day writing intensive, and we're just going to dig in with just a handful of people and get these novels in shape. People can contact me, via my website, Live, Write, Thrive. And the other thing I would really suggest, not to just drum up business for myself, but sure, I really seriously encourage new writers not to go too far in their novel writing before they get a professional critique. I finally changed my policy on my critique site, critiquemymanuscript.com, and I say on there, if this is your first novel, you only can send me your first 50 pages. What I found over the last few years is people were paying me $1,000, $2,000 to critique their entire novel that they wrote, and 99 times out of 100, those novels were so structurally a mess and were so lacking in so many novel components that really needed to be developed that it was really a waste of money for them. And in the long run, it really was a waste of time for them to write that whole novel. Other than what you've said about NaNoWriMo, it's always a good experience to try to write a novel just to learn the discipline of sitting down every day and writing. But that's well, it is good. A lot of people say, well, if you just keep writing and writing and writing like a rusty water faucet, eventually it'll flow clear and you'll just write brilliant. Well, that's absolutely wrong. The more you write badly, the more you'll write badly. Writing a lot does not mean you're going to write well eventually. 1,000 monkeys writing on a typewriter are not going to write the Bible by accident at some point, just because that's the evolutionary theory, right? I'm a creationist, so I believe you should create your work, not rely on chance, because it's going to take you millions and millions of years of mistakes. So, so do get your work critiqued. I would love all of you to send me your first 50 pages and let me critique it. I'll give you 100 or 200 comments and suggestions and tear the thing apart. And what writers have found when they have a professional critique done, that they really learn a lot. I've had people tell me that with even a 10-page critique, they learned more from me than they learned in 4 years of college taking creative writing classes. So it's personalized. Instead of going to a conference and hearing somebody teach you all about writing craft, you get your work torn apart and examine, and you get to see where your strengths and your weaknesses are, what you need to work on. It's just like a personal sports coach. If you're a basketball player and you've got a trainer, he's going to come over to you, unless it's Becky Hammond and she's going to come over to you and you're on the Spurs, you're going to get somebody saying to you, you know what, 90% of your game is great, but this is the 10% you really need to work on. And you'll spend 80% of your time working on that bad 10%. And that's how it works with sports or piano or whatever, dance. So it helps to have somebody professional and experienced help you see what you need to work on. Because honestly, most people can't see what they're bad at in writing. I can't. When I give my work to somebody else and they come back at me and say, this is not working, I'm like, what? I didn't see it at all. So yeah, I'm really grateful for that.
Very cool. Well, thank you for coming on and telling us about your book. I enjoyed reading it and enjoyed commenting on it. And we will put up your websites. So make sure you send us everything, and we'll put it up in the show notes.
That's great. I would be really grateful for that. And all my books can be found online anywhere, Amazon or Nook or any type of iBooks, whatever. So whatever format you use. But I would really encourage writers to get the workbook because
I do too.
Really just writing answers to those questions and making you think hard about your story. That's what it's all about. I mean, everything goes from idea into finished product. It's really a fun process, and you should love it and not hate it. A lot of people hate it because they can't figure out what they're doing.
Yeah, that's a sign that they need it, right? Well, thank you, and we'll go on and do some of our bits. But and if you want to sign off, you certainly can. And we appreciate you coming on the show.
Okay. All right, thank you so much, Catherine. Thanks, Damien, and I'm sorry about the library noise.
That's all right. I got a lot of editing to do. And just is there anyone you want to give a shout out to?
In what sense? What do you mean?
Well, say hi to them, thanks to them.
Well, I want to thank you guys.
No, that doesn't work.
A total prompt. But yeah, thank you guys for having me on the show. But not really.
Our pleasure.
I could give you a long list of people I would love to thank, but I think there's no time. So I really appreciate this opportunity to come back on the show and talk about my new book. So I thank you so much.
And
you're welcome. We love having you.
Can you do me a favor? Once finished here, can you go into the library and say, look, just thanks so much for letting me use your Wi-Fi. Can you fix your door?
Yeah, I can do that. It's got an automatic handicap thing, so that's why people press the button and it opens it for them.
Oh.
So I apologize.
Lazy,
I should have done this outside somewhere, but I was really worried about the connection. So.
Oh yeah.
Good. It's all good. All right. Well, we've got some things to move on, so I'll hang up from you just so we don't hear the banging. But thanks for being on. It's been a pleasure.
Okay. Thank you so much, you guys.
Alrighty.
I appreciate it.
Thanks. Oh, she was quick on the hang up. Bam.
Just like the door.
Just like the door. That'd be strange. Have you ever done that where you've been in a public place and you've had like an interview? I've seen, where was I? I was in a McDonald's, which is where I seem to spend a lot of my life. No, I was in a McDonald's and someone was doing something similar. They were just on a table and she was just talking to a laptop. I couldn't help myself. I was trying to listen in. But she was trying to be really professional. And it just wasn't working for her.
Not in a McDonald's. Our site is, our podcast is fine. But yeah, it would be like, I had somebody tell me they actually did a phone interview while they were driving for a job.
Really?
And I'm like, really? Oh yeah, she says, I can do two things at once. It's like, I can't. That would not be good at all.
Well, this lady in McDonald's was, I think she was doing tech support.
Oh, okay.
Because she was going, okay, now I need you to open such and such a link. And I'm thinking, wow, that gives me a different perspective now if I've ever rung tech support for my work. And I think they're in an office typing away. They could be in the toilet for all I know.
Or they could be on the beach on their phone with a headset. Okay, go to, okay, now you'll see the blah, blah, blah. To the pull down menu.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I have had that happen once before, but the tech guys that I ring, like I've got direct lines to techs in other states, and some of them, like yesterday, I rang one of them just to ask a question, and I heard go past, and I said, "What was that?" He goes, "Oh, I'm at the Grand Prix today." I said, "All right, Jason. Well, I've got 1:35 before they come back around." He says, "Yeah, pretty much." Asked him a question. Sure enough. Oh man.
Oh, I love that. That is very funny.
Actually, you know what's funny? When people get bored, I had a very late emergency service call last night, and I signed in through security at the airport. And when I came back out, I could see the X-ray scanner. You walk through there, you put your things on the conveyor belt.
Right.
And he was ticking off all my tools, and we were just chatting. And while he was doing that, I said to him, "Oh, so your X-ray scanner shows the last thing you scanned?" And he went, "Yeah." So how come you scanned your sandwich? And he went, "No reason." I went, "Yeah, right. You must be bored tonight at 1 a.m." So
They're making scans of their meals.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
you just know that there's no one there at that time. And like, "Hey, man, wonder what a sandwich looks like in the X-ray machine."
I'm surprised they don't put themselves through the X-ray machine.
It's got to, yeah, they must do stupid things. Anyway. Good.
Anyway,
we've got stuff to do. So for those listening live, sorry about the clunking and the noise. I'll have to clean that up later. But let's do a word of the week.
Let's do word of the week.
Word of the week brought to you by audible.com. Check it out at audibletrial.com/newbie-writers. Helps us out. And chatting to Suzanne, I don't know if she mentioned it on the show before, but she's got some books up there on Audible. I think we should
Yes, she does.
play some. A Thin Film of Lies. Is that the latest one?
That could be, yes.
Yeah.
But she writes romances. She writes Western romances under another name.
All right. Well, let's try and play some of it.
Okay.
Fran searched her daughter's face and saw pain searing her features. It would do no good to tell Megan that she'd get over this guy. Not now. He was supposed to meet me at the pool, and I figured he was late, but he never showed up. And then when I was leaving, I saw him across the parking lot.
I don't want to have to do this. I don't want to take the dog to the pound. It's very reminiscent of that other one that Molly Giles was talking about.
Yes, where she was overhearing that whole. Oh, and she turned that into a brilliant set piece. So that was.
Yes.
Yeah, that was. I don't know. I asked my publisher about audible.com and she said that she does it. She has the books go Audible when they're selling pretty well as hard copy and ebooks.
Oh.
Fair enough. So I thought, all right, that's fair enough. I don't want to do it quite yet anyway. So.
And actually,
that's fine, but it is an option for people.
I had your publisher share a book, a picture of some people holding your book.
Mm-hmm.
Please don't tell me you're the one that's holding the book upside down, and the other three have got it the right way up.
No, those are my friends. Those were that was Beth Barani and Erza Barani, and they were holding up their books. And then two friends from high school came to the Day of the Book last Saturday, and so that's one of them holding the book upside down.
Right.
So I will blame high school friends on that.
Yes, I would. Anyway. All right, word of the week.
Word of the week.
So you got this from wordsmith.org.
Yes, I did.
Parastatal. I see. That sounds like you'd go to the doctor and say, "Look, I've got this weird rash. And
I need the parastatal removed."
Yes. It actually means a company or agency owned wholly or partly by the government.
So a parasite might be right.
Pretty much, yeah. Relating to such an organization. So there you go. Parastatal.
Parastatal.
That's a word a politician would use, I reckon. And they'd find that word and then they'd hoe in on it. So every second sentence would be, well, it is part of the parastatal.
Exactly. Or it is, a parastatal. Or maybe they would parastatally. I mean, they would turn it into an adverb. Yeah.
Well, the local radio station here is running a competition. They have a lot of politicians on their show. And what I thought it was the best thing, it's so snarky. They want you to count every time a politician says absolutely.
Is it a drinking game?
No, but that you can win a prize. Like they'll keep track of it as well, and then you can ring in on a Friday and say, "Okay, this week I think there's been 32 uses of the word absolutely." And
that's funny.
That's pretty close. You win a prize.
That's funny. I would think you would turn that into a drinking game. That just has that written out. Every time they say absolutely, you take a shot.
They just latch onto words, and the news has now got to a point. I think we get so tired of everything being, negative or whatever. They often do those stories where they say, "Looks like our Prime Minister Tony Abbott has discovered a new word," and they'll just cut up at the big interview they did at the start of the thing and just show him repeating that.
Yeah. Well, and we have that. I mean, we have that with our, the late night shows, like the Colbert Report, which is going off the air, and also Jon Stewart, which is also being shifted over, The Daily Show. But that's what they do. I mean, they would do a contest. Like, okay, we had a drinking game, and every time someone said, it wasn't them, or, we're having email issues with Hillary Clinton right now. And, so every time you hear them deny anything, take a shot. And you have to laugh, because otherwise it's so depressing. You'll just be sobbing in a dark corner someplace.
Well, yeah, I heard about this thing with Hillary Clinton. And I started to think, I tried to work out what her personal email would be then. So would she have, Hillary C or Hillary.C at hotmail.com?
Hotmail.
Or would she have like a little pet name that her husband would give her? So I don't know what that would be. Sprinkles1962 at gmail.com, and she's emailing like other heads of state going, "Sorry, I'm out at the moment, just doing something on my phone. Can you allow sprinkles?" That would be
funny, because I remember in the very early years of getting your emails. I have a Yahoo email. I mean, I've got, mine is ancient email. Where people would do something funny, like, hot girls love boys, or, hot boys loves other boys. And after about 2 or 3 years, suddenly realizing that they're using this for business, and they might want to rethink that email address.
Yeah. I'm the same. I've had to get other ones. Like I was doing, so I had an email address. I've still got it, and I only use it for spam. That I had when I was like 12. And then I started to get to that point of going, well, I need to give like an employer an email address. So I signed up with Hotmail, Damien both at Hotmail or whatever it was. But then even that I find looks a bit odd. I don't like seeing businesses where they say, if you want to send me an email, you can go to such and such at Yahoo or at Gmail or whatever. I don't know. I find that really unprofessional. It's not hard to get a domain in your business name or something similar to that. Some people even just get their own name. They register that .com. You don't have to have a website on there. Just register the .com for $5 a year.
Yeah.
And set up an email.
Do it. Somebody took mine. I forgot to renew it, and they took it. My problem was I didn't want people to have to write Bramcamp at CatherineBramcamp.com, because that's just brutally long. So that's why I've kept the Yahoo.
Yeah. I don't know what you could do. Actually.
Yeah, I'll come up with something. It doesn't. So far, I don't know. I don't think it really matters. I get enough correspondence with just the Yahoo. You almost don't notice it because it's older.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know, but I see there's my electrician uses.
But you're right. If you're a big business, you want to have everybody. Also, if you have everybody on, and this is why I didn't, but if you have everybody on your email, so you have Damien at bigbusiness.com, then bigbusiness.com owns your emails, which is then cycles right back to why Hillary Clinton was not using the government email, because then they would own her emails.
Right. Well, shout out to Sprinkles then. That's
at hotmail.com.
Yeah.
Okay, so should we do a prompt?
Yes, we should.
Okay, so mine, and this works out really well, is called Change of Venue, which is what our guest did. She changed her venue, not maybe to the best, but she did.
Yep.
So I read this great list the other day that was titled Great Places to Write. And so what I'm saying is, what I'm offering to you is to make a list now, so that when you come smack up against some kind of writer's block, you are ready with a separate list of where to go to shake things up. So don't wait and make your list of where to go when you're blocked. You might not even be able to make the list. It might be painful and you'll cry. So think of where you can go that's easy, that you can get to, that would help you work your way out of a writer's block. So like for my list, I have the library, although I would probably go in the back of the back of the library, not in the lobby.
Yeah.
It's not so quiet there. Bookstore, a cafe / Starbucks, because Starbucks is, say what you will about Starbucks, they are really friendly to writers, and you could sit there for a couple hours and nobody will say anything to you. It's awesome. Park, if you have a favorite park. If you're close to a beach, you can go to the beach. The only problem with that, of course, is getting sand in your computer. So you might want to think about what else to bring. Go to a river or any place where there is water. Walk to anywhere and then sit at the end of the walk and write, because walking is very good for loosening up our blocks. Foreign country, one of my favorites, and never, in my case, ever on an airplane. I have a terrible time writing on airplanes. So if I'm blocked, that's not the best place to try to break up the block. So that's your prompt. Think of where you would go if you wanted to change it up and you were having trouble with your book. Where else could you go write? Is
the foreign country, though, a bit like that? I'm going out for a packet of cigarettes and never coming back.
Yeah.
Like, you imagine.
It helps. I mean, talk about, major. If I sit in a cafe in a foreign country, I can't understand a word of what anybody's saying. Talk about fabulous, white noise. It's wonderful. I just love it. I don't get enough time really to do that because, of course, I'm busy looking around. But that would be, I have had good luck with coming up with books and ideas while I'm traveling.
Another good place is a pub.
Yeah.
That seems to work for me.
Yeah. Definitely a pub. Here, the pubs and the bars are too loud.
Yeah, but
they're not as family oriented as they are in Australia and England, which I think is too bad, because I like that atmosphere, that pub atmosphere.
Yeah, family orientated is good to a point, but then when you've got like your 5-year-old you've picked up on a Friday after school at 3, and it's like, what should we do for dinner? And he's like, let's go to the pub, Dad. But yes, no, I don't know. Even if it's noisy, that doesn't really bother me. In fact, that's kind of good, because I think then, they're all doing their own thing. No one's looking at me. They're not, they're not just staring around looking at people going, what's he writing?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's good. I guess when I'm thinking of noise, it's like sometimes some of the pubs, because I live in a college town, and so we've got a lot of bands and we have a lot of bars. We call it the Katati Crawl. We have that many bars. And but the bands all play like at high volume, and I can't write with really loud music like that doesn't work. But just chatting, just like people laughing and chatting and having a good time. I agree with you. That's totally good to do.
You need to find a theme pub, like an Irish or an English pub.
Yeah, I do. And if I travel with my mother, I will. We actually found an Irish pub to eat dinner in when we were in Hong Kong. So that just shows you how tenacious my mother can be sometimes when she wants her Guinness. Right.
That, with the people serving of Irish sort of descent?
Yes, actually there were.
That's okay. Because
they found like the 3 who were in Hong Kong, and that was where we went. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, I have a thing. It's a mental thing. You go to like a place that does fish, chips, pizza, and Asian cuisine. And you're like, which one of these do you do properly? I'll go for that, because you can't do all 3 very well.
That's a good point.
Unless you're a Greek, Italian, Chinese person. Choose one. So yes, we all have them. You've all been in there at 11 o'clock at night going, oh, God, I'm hungry. Wow, you guys do the world. Everything,
right? You do everything. Yes. My son, Michael, when he was in Edinburgh, was fascinated by these stores where you could go in and bring food in, and they would fry up anything that you wanted fried. And he said that one of the things that he would look for is like, just don't take, if you want to fry up your Twinkies or your Snickers bars. He had a fried Snickers bar. He said, you don't take your Snickers bar in right after someone's done the fish and chips, just as an FYI.
No, my brother found it out the hard way when he was studying. He used to do that. He got to know the girls in the cafeteria. He'd be buying stuff. He's like, can you chuck that in the fryer? But if they were doing calamari that day, put it this way, Mars and fish, not a good combination.
No. No.
Anyway, let's do a tortured sentence.
All right.
Next time, don't put the wrong emphasis on the right syllable. Tortured sentences. That was taken from inside of the modem at the library that Suzanne was in today. Poor thing.
You didn't get to say the hamsters are exhausted. They were grinding away trying to up the amps just so we could talk to Suzanne.
That's the thing. Those free Wi-Fi's are sort of designed for you to check your email or pay some bills, not to be streaming a live podcast to Australia.
Right. Right. Oh well. We learn things. It's all good. So this is from a description of a book. And the book is called The Forgotten Cottage, should this whole little description inspire you. Here's the description. When Annie and her fiancé Will purchase an old cottage to renovate, she's excited for a peaceful, fresh start. Okay, already that's a problem, but that's not the problem. But something is lurking in her new home, and it threatens to destroy everything she holds dear in this atmospheric tale.
Oh, I hate it when they say atmospheric tale. It means it's got no substance to it.
Maybe it doesn't have any of the pillars at all, but just like everything she holds dear in the atmospheric tale, not in her own little world. So we pulled point of view out in the middle of the sentence, which I think is just lovely.
Speaking of terrible, have you seen the 50 Shades of Grey film?
No, of course not. I probably couldn't bear it.
Oh, well, can you? Because I feel like I'm just whinging to like no one now. It is terrible.
Is it?
It is boring. Oh, it's like watching...
I know, kind of interesting if you can make sex boring.
I know. Well, yeah, that's right. And I'm a man.
So it's even doubly amazing.
I know. Like, you know, you can see two dogs humping and go, oh, yeah, that's all right. But no, it was terrible. And like, you work at universities. You've got, you know, grad students pretending to act. I'm sure you've seen those sort of things. It was on that level. It looked like two people learning to act. And it had... Oh, I'm ranting now. And it had every sort of romantic cliche, but never really got there. It was kind of like, I don't know, Sting would like it. It's like the tantric cliche.
Tantric cliche.
they are everything about it. And I said, I was grunting and groaning through it. Sharon was slapping my leg going, shh, this is romantic. Oh, yeah, right. This is terrible. Just the acting was bad. And she said, oh, I loved the movie. It was so true to the book. She was even saying some lines just as the actor was saying, and she'd never seen the film before.
Wow. I don't know if true to the book, considering how badly the book was written, is a compliment.
No, terrible. And I said to her at the end, so I was waiting. If the main character, if the bird in that said, you had me at hello, I was leaving. So I was out because that was the only thing we needed to cap it off.
Just in a string of cliche moves.
And, you know, he's got this like dungeon thing with all this stuff hanging on the wall, and it's supposed to be his torture room and this sort of stuff. And it gets to a point, she says to him, oh, you know, show me you want to punish me. Do your worst to me. Do the worst you can ever think. He slaps her on the ass 6 times, and then it cuts to her crying, going, don't ever do that to me again. And then the movie finishes. And I'm going, oh, please. He's got all of this other stuff hanging up, racks and whips and that, and he chose to just give her a little bit of a paddle. I was like, my God. Missed the mark.
I have friends, never mind. I have friends who watch that, and it's like, oh, never mind. A lot more experience, and it's good for them. But they had a comment about that. It's like, wow, she didn't really go very far. Look at all that cool stuff. How come they didn't use that stuff?
I know. I don't know. It's just dumb. It's just a dumb film. And I happened to be speaking to my apprentice who's 16. I don't know why he was watching this, but he said, oh, have you seen 50 Shades of Grey? I went, excuse me, what are you watching that for? He said, well, my girlfriend wanted to watch it. I don't want to get in. I'm not your parent. I don't want to get into that. But he said,
really?
He goes, it was really bad. He said, I found it really boring. God, if a horny teenager finds it boring,
Yeah.
far out.
Well, I'll have to. I won't go. I only go to the movie theater for really great big movies.
No.
But we can stream it and rent it when it comes out for rental, which I'm sure will be soon.
Yes.
We'll take a look at it, and then yes, I will be able to sympathize with you, and we'll see if I get all the way through the movie.
That will be your challenge, and that
Yeah.
is your challenge for anyone else listening. See how far you get through 50 Shades of Shit. Anyway, and they're doing a sequel. Great.
Oh, great.
The cleanup. That's what they should call it.
Clean up. Or maybe 50 Shades. We're sorry.
God. Oh, made my spine tingle with irkness. All right. That'll do it, I think.
That'll do it.
Yes. I don't know. Who are we got on next week? Next week's my guest, isn't it?
Next week, it's all about you and Nathan Weaver, right?
Yes. So for those listening, it's going to be a day later. So it'll be my Sunday. So it'll be on the Saturday. We'll do the show just for scheduling purposes. It was easier to sort out. So we're going to have a chat to Nathan, and I think I've organised a co-host. I have to double check that. But yeah, we're going to talk about killing me off.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting. I won't say fun. That's not nice, but interesting.
Some of the listeners might be going, "Really? You're going to kill him off?" Get a new host. That's all right. So yes, stay tuned for that. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
then.
have a good time. I will be in Seattle driving. Terry Pratchett copies up to my son so that he has his collection all in one place.
Speaking of which, he died.
Yes, he did. And it was very sad. I've been very sad all day.
So rest in peace on your tortoise.
Yes.
So, yeah, people were saying it was a bit of a shock. I personally wasn't really shocked because he was such an outspoken advocate for dementia and Alzheimer's and all of that sort of thing, and that he knew that this was going to happen. And so the last few tweets are very Terry Pratchett with him.
Yeah. All caps, talking to death. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. So I thought that was cool. And I don't know, the general vibe, people seem to sort of latch onto that and think that was a good way to do it. They're like, yes, there's sadness that you've lost a literary great.
Yes.
But we kind of knew he was building this up for the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. So at least, yeah. And, he's true to himself, and I admire that. So.
Yeah. There's a really good documentary about it. I think it's about 2 years old, 3 maybe now. Go check it out. I can't remember what it's called. Look up Terry Pratchett. I think it's Dementia documentary. And it takes you into his life. If you've got an interest in writing, even just from that point of view, to see how great does it, and that it's the writing him that was keeping him going. And yeah, that was a little bit sad to watch. He was mortified that, he writes for himself, but he writes for his fans, and doing those readings, you do the book launch, and he could only read a certain amount because his brain would then almost forget how to read.
Oh, wow.
And he'd come off going, I'm
awful.
tired. I lost my place. I can't. And then he'd have to rest, and then he could read a bit. So, but he'd still do it. It wouldn't put him off. He didn't become one of those recluses who's just going to sit there and go, right, well, this is it. I've resigned myself to the fact that I'm losing my memory. So, yeah.
He just kept up. He kept up with it. Well, that's why Hemingway committed suicide, is that he was taking a combination of drugs for pain. And it made him so kind of spacey, kind of out of it. He could no longer write, and he couldn't live that way. He couldn't tolerate it. And that's why he committed suicide, because he could no longer write. So I understand with Pratchett too. It's like, if you can't do it, if you can't do what your passion is, what you exist for, what is your quality of life? It's a good question to ask.
And there's also a question to raise, to think about how does technology prolong that sort of thing? So Hemingway, he couldn't write, so he offed himself. But then if you look at this documentary of Terry Pratchett, he's got 3 or 4 screens, the way it's set up. He's got, things to help him, notes, reminders, whatever.
Yeah,
Now,
I think it's two different. I think that we're suffering from two different things. Too.
yeah. But if you get to a point where you can't really physically write, are we at a point now, technology, where if I couldn't write, if I had some sort of disability or Parkinson's, couldn't write with a pen,
Mhm.
I could just record it, couldn't I? And then do text, and
I
that would
think
keep
so.
you going.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Anyway, let's get
Anyway,
going.
on that cheerful note.
Oh yeah. Tune in next week to listen to me die.
There we go. It's going to be a death month. That's right.
All right. So until next week, we'll see you then.
Until next week.
Your book starts here on the Newbie Writers Podcast.